what I put up on the screen up there, one of the things we didn't talk about is throughout our marriage, after every argument, nasty, knockdown, drag out, one of the things that my wife and I did was we you know how I talk about postmortems? I'd go to her and say, honey, how can we avoid ever having that issue ever come up again? And we came up with some rules, and we don't even think about the rules now. They're just part of our life. But I just wanted to put them out there so you guys could see what they were. We used to, when we first got married, a lot of what we spent our time arguing about was who was at fault. You know, I'd say, well, it was your fault. No, you didn't do it. It's my fault. Finally, one day, I just got frustrated. I said, honey, no matter what happens, it's David's fault. Now, what the hell are we going to do about it? Let's get to the fix-in part. And we started talking about it at couples meetings, and there's literally people all over the world that use that rule as written, that it's David's fault. And I'll call somebody up and they'll go, man, you were in trouble last night. You really screwed up. I'm like, oh yeah, what did I do? You know? So my shoulders are big enough, you can blame me, you know. The important thing is, instead of arguing whose fault it is, what are we going to do to fix it? Let's get to the solution. I can't overemphasize number 2. Divorce is not an option. I see way too many couples that throw the D word around, you know, as a method of power and control and sarcasm to hurt each other. The D word is not even part of our vocabulary. It's off the table, done, you know. And one of the things that happened was, and it's not, she had said that the D word once, and I looked at her and I said, you know what, from this point forward, I'm not going to be controlled by that word. You can claim you're going to divorce me. I can't stop you from divorcing me, but I'm not going there, and I'm never going to divorce you. No matter what happens, I will not divorce you, period. End of story. You're stuck with me for life. And it took a lot of that steam out of that when we get into an argument, and it removed the fear, you know. And I think now she actually believes that I'm not going anywhere. We're in this game for the rest of our days, thank God. Going to bed mad is not allowed. You know, it's amazing how your staunch position at about 3 o'clock in the morning starts to bend when you really want to get into bed and you're really tired, and you know, but you know you can't get into bed until we come to some kind of an agreement. Can we just maybe table this argument? You know, we're not going to go to bed mad. We violate that every once in a while, but we're much better than it used to be. If it's older than 3 months, it can't be brought up. Doesn't mean you can't kick the can down the road. The problem is, you know, when things that are older than 3 months would be getting brought up was, you know, remember in 1922 when you did, you know, in the middle of an argument, you're trying to use it as a weapon. If there's a serious issue, there's something you want to discuss, bring it up. You got 90 days, it should come up to the surface. It doesn't mean that if you're not ready to discuss something, you can say, you know what, I really want to talk about this issue over here, but I'm really not ready. I have to talk to my sponsor, do some more spiritual work on it, meditate on it a little bit more. I want to table it, and that kicks the can down the road for another 90 days. So you can keep the issue alive, but if it's something that hasn't come up, you know, like remember when you did such and such to me, and her memory is like an elephant. She remembers everything, and she'll start one of those, do you remember when you did such and such? And I'll go, no, because I don't. I have no recollection of what the hell she's talking about. But she can tell you what I said, what I was wearing, you know, color of my shoes, I mean, all that stuff. You will show your spouse the same common courtesy that you show a stranger on the street. Like please, thank you, hello, open the door. It's amazing how I realized that I was treating her more poorly than I would treat a stranger on the street. I wasn't showing her basic common courtesies. Not okay. You must say hello and goodbye, and it must be accompanied with a kiss. I don't care how mad you are, you're going to come give me a kiss before you leave. You know, and if you're going to leave, you need to tell us where you're going. You know, so we could be having an argument, and she gets pissed off. She's going to come give me a kiss, and I'm going to see where you're off to. I'm going out. Well, how am I supposed to send a search team to go find you going out? Where are you going? I'm going shopping. Okay. You know, just let me know where you're going, so we can figure out if something goes wrong. The same thing is true if I'm going into my cave. You know, if I need to, she wants to talk about things. That's how she processes. I'm not that way. I like to go into my cave and go to God, pray, meditate, figure it out, and then come out of the cave. But that triggers a sense of abandonment in her, you know, because now she's feeling like, wait a minute, he's emotionally unavailable. He's gone into his cave. So I tell her, hey, I'm going into my cave, and I'll be back in an hour and 15 minutes. And she's okay with that. She can wait an hour and 15 minutes. She'll be like, oh, okay, not a problem. It's not okay for me to go into the cave when she doesn't know when I'm going to come out. She doesn't know if I'm depressed, if I'm going to be in there for 3 days. She has no idea. It's common courtesy. Yeah, I need to go get some prayer meditation time. I'll be back. Now lately, if we get into any kind of disagreement, I go into my cave and call my sponsor. She goes out on the back porch and calls her sponsor, and we meet back at the couch. Anyway, you must fight fair, number 8. Critically important. Not fighting fair. If you're going to have an argument. But passive-aggressive behavior, underhanded stuff, you guys know what that generally means. Physical abuse is not acceptable in any form. That goes from slapping, punching, hitting, pinching, not okay, because it's way too easy to escalate. And having been a bouncer and teaching close quarter combat and stuff, I'm not going there. I'm just absolutely not going to go there with her. During a fight or a passionate discussion, you must be touching in some way. If you're going to have an argument, do not stand in the kitchen, one on either side of the island, and have an argument. It's not okay. It's okay even if you sit on one couch and she sits on the other and your toes are touching across the table. It's really hard to get to that blood-curdling, I want to rip your head off and crap down your neck if you can't touch each other. What's the matter?
There's a really bad buzzing going
the
on.
feedback?
Can we turn it?
We can turn it off if you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Crank it down. Sorry about that. We got a technical issue in the speakers.
Yes.
There we go. Completely gone. Here's one we used to violate on a regular basis. We don't anymore. No fighting in the car. There's nothing like, you know what they call that in WWA? They call it a cage match. Lock yourself in a steel cage going 80 miles an hour down the road. Oh, this is a perfect time to have an argument. No, it's not. It's unsafe for everybody on the road. We're not going to do it, right? Either party at any time can give a timeout symbol. If you're not prepared and you're feeling uncomfortable and you think the conversation's going the wrong way, you can give a timeout. So you know what, timeout. We're going to go to our own corners. And that's what I was talking about. She goes where she goes, I go where I go. You talk to your sponsors, you work it out over there, come back with more spiritual people. Call if you're going to be late. More than 15 minutes, you owe a phone call. I used to go to meetings and say, I'm going to such and such a meeting. She knows it gets over at 8 o'clock, and I'd come home at 9:30. Sometimes I'd stop by the diner with some guys after the meeting and have a cup of coffee. And I was so inconsiderate. And she's sitting home, is he wrapped around a tree? Where is he? Especially this was started before the days of cell phones. Now it's so much easier, you just text, where are you? But after my Saturday morning men's meeting, a lot of times I'll stop and get lottery tickets, I'll get gas, and I'll text her and say, hey, getting some donuts. I'll just let her know I'm running a few minutes late. Just common basic courtesies. Major purchases must be agreed by both parties, 2 yeses and 1 no. And we have a threshold of $500. Even though I have my own pot of money, if it's over $500, I'm going to come to her and say, hey, I've got the money saved for this. This is what I'm going to get, yada, yada, yada. There's these, it's a Japanese sword manufacturer that it's like 1700s company. It's been around for hundreds of years, and they make knives, chef knives. And I've wanted some of these chef knives for like 20 years, and I've had the money sitting in the bank for years, and I finally started buying them. But each knife is like $350. And I was going to break the 500 threshold very quickly, and so I had to come to her and say, hey, I want to buy some of these knives, and let her know. Just common courtesy, because otherwise she's going, well, those are really expensive. Where the hell they come from? How did you afford that? And you can trigger jealousy and resentment in the relationship, because she may be broke on her side of the budget. She may be skimping and can't afford to go to the store and get, do whatever the hell she wants, and I come walking in with $1,000 worth of knives. You want to see a resentment? That'll create it very fast. You always present the couple as a team. You're a unified front, especially with children. So the kids can't come to me to talk about something, and the first question out of my mouth is, have you talked to your mother about it? Hang on a second, let me talk to mom. And the two of us will get together, we'll have a conversation in our bedroom, we'll come out and say, hey, we've decided that this is what we're going to do. That way there's no playing off. Same thing with family members. My family will call me and say, hey, can you and Brenda go do yada yada? I go, I don't know, I got to talk to Brenda. Just a standard answer is, I need to talk to my wife. And we become a unified front. If she doesn't want to go, that's okay. Then the answer is going to be no. If it's really important to me to go, we're going to take 2 separate cars. So that if she gets there for 5 minutes and then she gets uncomfortable and wants to leave, she can get in her car and go. And I can still stay, if that's important to me. But it requires communication, compromise, important stuff. No plans or invitations affecting the couple are made without discussing it. Like, I can't accept a workshop without talking to her, because somebody's got to keep the home fires burning. It impacts her. She has a vote in that. It's not like I'm free and I can just go off and do whatever the hell I want. Somebody's got to keep take care of things, to make sure the dog's taken care of, make sure the kids are cared for, etc. I see that a lot in AA. It's really sad. No program bashing allowed. Silence is not an acceptable form of communication. You can't withhold from your spouse. And I don't care whether it's money, whether it's emotions, sex. It's not a weapon. You know, we are a couple. We're unified, and we follow a biblical tradition. You know, Ephesians 5. My body belongs to her. Her body belongs to me, and I'm not going to abuse it. You know, I'm not going to misuse it. I'm going to love, care, and caress it. I'm going to treat her with respect. I'm going to talk to her how she feels, and vice versa. You know, I'm not going to. I know I could crush her in a nanosecond because she's codependent. You know, all I have to do is stop talking to her, and it's like agony. It's like Chinese water torture to her. You know, it triggers her fear of abandonment. Why would you do that to your best friend? It just doesn't make sense. No program bashing is allowed. No talking about hot topics when you're tired. Also, we have a 9 o'clock rule. For some reason, she likes to discuss things as we're getting ready to go to bed, and I'm exhausted, and my fuse is about that long. You know, and she wants to discuss something, and I'm like, honey, it's after 9 o'clock. You got to table this till the morning. I need a good night's sleep, and then by all means. But I have to give her a time when I'm going to be willing to talk about it. Make sense? The vows, rules, traditions, and concepts of family are a foundation of our relationship. We already talked about that. This one, we don't even try to enforce it because it's just our natural thing. The couple should submit itself to semi-annual inventory. She knows that I'm doing inventory. I know that she's doing inventory. I have a sponsor. I know she's got a sponsor. You got to bring a whole individual to the relationship. You got to be somebody that's working a spiritual program, working the 12 steps. If you're not doing that, you're violating the covenant, in my book, of the relationship. You know, because if you're growing spiritually and your partner isn't, you've only got two choices. Stop growing, or they're going to reach up and try to pull you back because they can feel the separation that's tearing the relationship apart. You both got to be growing together. Now, you're not going to grow at the same speed, so sometimes you have to wait for the other one to catch up a little bit, but you know, you each go through your own season, but if you're both growing and God's the foundation, it will continue to grow and blossom. Anyway, I wanted to talk about those. One of the things that's made a huge difference to us is couples meetings. And in a couples meeting, is it over there? Have you got the intro underneath here? We've started a couples meeting that we go to. Here we go. And I'm just going to read the intro so you can see what it's like because I want to get it on the tape. We live in Flower Mound, so it's the Flower Mound Couples Group. And it starts off in a typical meeting. My name's Dave. This is my wife, Brenda. Welcome to the Flower Mound Open Meeting, Couples Meeting of Couples Affected by Alcoholism. In this group, we practice the long form of the third tradition, which states our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism, hence we may refuse none who wish to recover. In our group, we have some that are 2 Al-Anons, we have some that are 2 AAs, we have some that are 1 AA, 1 Al-Anon, we have some that are double winners, we have a gay couple that comes, we have one couple where they used to come together and then she's got a job now and he comes by himself because his wife can't get to the meeting, you know, so it's kind of an open meeting deal. As such, we are a fellowship of couples who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help other couples to recover from alcoholism. There are no dues or fees for membership. Like AA and Al-Anon, we are self-supporting through our own contributions. We are not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Do not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorse nor oppose any causes. And like the third tradition states, nor ought AA membership ever depend on money or conformity. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an A group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. That being said, let me again welcome you to the Flower Mound Couples Group. We're really happy to have you with us here. We who live with the problem of alcoholism understand one another as perhaps few others can. We were lonely and frustrated, but in AA and Al-Anon we discovered that through practicing the 12 steps, no situation is hopeless and it is possible for us to find contentment and happiness. So much depends on our own attitudes. As we learn to place our problem in true perspective, we find they lose the power to dominate our thoughts and lives. Without spiritual help, our thinking becomes distorted by trying to force solutions. We become irritable and unreasonable without knowing it. At this meeting, problems with alcoholism will always have a priority. For each meeting, one couple volunteers to bring a topic. After they've shared briefly on the topic, they will lead the meeting and give each couple a chance to share or ask questions. There will be no crosstalk. Also, this meeting is not a place to garbage dump or argue. Keep focused on the feelings. These meetings are to share your own experience, strength, and hope with each other as it relates to the spiritual principles found in our steps and the literature of AA and Al-Anon. Please feel free to pass if you wish. Since we want everyone to have a chance to speak, the leaders may occasionally ask you to put a period on your sharing, and then we talk about when the meeting's going to close. That's how we open up the meeting. And then we use any AA or Al-Anon conference-approved literature is fine. We use the big book, the 12 and 12, the ODAT book, Discovering Choices, The Dilemma of the Alcoholic Marriage. There's so much more relationship stuff that's on the Al-Anon side there is on the AA side. And the couple will bring a topic out of one of those pieces of literature. I tend to put some quotes down, and then I'll ask a couple questions for the topic. And we hand the sheets out, and then we start the meeting. So for today's meeting, I'm going to hand the meeting over to my lovely bride, Brenda, and she's going to give us a topic.
Hi everyone, my name's Brenda. I'm a member of Al-Anon.
Hey, Brenda.
So just because we're probably not going to read the closing to the couples meeting.
Well, I'm going to read it.
Oh, okay.
We're going to get it.
Then never mind. It'll be self-explanatory. You may not believe me, but we didn't discuss what the topic was going to be this morning. I was in charge of the topic committee. And we spoke, or I heard David speak a lot this weekend about selfishness and how that's problematic in the program, and about how love is a requirement of the program. And so I thought, since this is a couples meeting, that we would do the topic on love. And for me, I had to learn that love is not a feeling. It's got nothing to do with how I feel about you, especially like about David or other people I love. Love is a decision. Love requires sacrifice. We talked a little bit about that last night. You're always going to pay a price. Love requires time. Love means that I often have to give up what I want and what's good for me in lieu of what David wants and what's good for him. Love means that I give someone else priority. I have priorities. I know what mine are. I'm going to do what my higher power calls me to do before I ever do what David wants me to do. But that said, I know that my higher power wants me to make David a priority in my life. So if there's something that's really important to him that's not really important to me, I'll often give up what's a priority for me in lieu of what's a priority for him. Because that's what love does. Love makes a demonstration. Now, each relationship is going to have its own way of making demonstrations. For me, let me draw a line, I'll forget. Some examples of that demonstration might be something as simple as cooking a meal for him when I'm not even going to be eating it. It might mean he might want to have sex, and I'm not particularly in the mood. And this, I hear about this one a lot. Well, I just don't feel like it. It doesn't matter how you feel. That doesn't mean that I'm required to do things I don't want to do or anything like that. It just means that if he has a need, like, he's not going to go somewhere else to get that met, not without a really big consequence.
She told me that if I could find my testicles hanging on the Christmas tree and visit them anytime I want, if that ever occurred.
It means going out of my way maybe for doing something nice for a member of his family. It means I do things without complaint or without a bad attitude. Now, he really likes doing workshops, and I don't. And it used to be a really big issue in our marriage, especially when our children were young. And we pray about it now, and I just kind of, how he talked about, well, he hasn't heard the nudge from God. And I feel like saying, you better learn to better communicate with him. Because, I do feel the nudge from God. And so often the biggest conflicts we have in our marriage is because I felt the nudge to do something, and I am certain that this is what God wants us to do. And he's like, no. And so we pray about this. And when David brought this to me, I just had a feeling. like I prayed about it, and I just had a feeling that God wanted me to be agreeable to this and to say yes to this. And I can't explain my feelings to you. I just have them. And he recently had an experience where he got invited to do something. And in the past, he would have just done what he wanted to do and what he felt God called him to do. And that didn't work real well. And so, I prayed about it. And it's not so much that I didn't want to do it, because I kind of did want to do it. But I just had this feeling that we weren't supposed to. And I had to bring it back to him. And even though I knew he really wanted to do it, because I believe that my higher power was telling me no, I had to say, I know you really want to do this. And I'd like to be able to say, yeah, I really want to do this too. But I have a bad feeling about it, and I don't think we're meant to do it. So those are examples of making a demonstration. Love makes the person more important than their position. Love forgives. We talked a little bit about that last night. Love binds what is not profitable. I'll call them out. I'll say, what, that's not acceptable. I don't like that. I think you just lied to that person. We had a very short interchange this morning at breakfast. I was like, serious? I didn't even say anything. All I did was look at him, and we had the entire conversation.
I took a tea bag out of the container, and she ordered tea. They had a selection of teas. I said, I want to try this later. And I looked at her and I said, I'll pay for it, because she was giving me the hairy eyeball. And I did pay for it.
Sometimes love says no. Sometimes love walks away. Sometimes that's necessary. Love is nice. Love is careful with its words. Love compromises. Love takes a lot of time. If you only have 20 minutes to give your spouse a day, it's probably not going to work out, because it takes a certain amount of time to invest in the other person to where you can get to the point where the good stuff even starts to happen. If you're not willing to give the time, then that's not very loving. Love takes a lot of investment. I cannot be selfish and be loving at the same time. We're not always going to get this perfectly. Sometimes my kids are going to have needs. Sometimes, work is going to have needs. Sometimes there's someone in AA who really is in crisis that's not abusing the privilege of using David's time. And I have to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to forego my time with him tonight so this other person can get their needs met. If we don't make each other a priority, if we don't love each other well, I used to really resent it, because David was so popular in AA and everyone thought so highly of him. And you know what I would think to myself? I would think, really? How are you going to teach that person to be a good husband and a good father when you're so busy running around helping the other alcoholics? How is that loving me? How is that being sober? And so there's a balance between doing 12-step work and being a parent and holding down a job, because you know what? You need the job, right? We need a job. And I'm not an alcoholic, but I would just wager to bet that you're more likely to relapse when you're divorced, your kids hate you, and you're unemployed. I'm just saying. I can't always love David well. I can't love David well on my own. I need to ask God for his help. But it is my responsibility, and it's my commitment. And for me to sit and stay in a marriage, and I have to say, I don't believe in divorce, but that said, I understand why people get divorced. And there have been times when I thought, oh my gosh, I might not have another option. But staying in the marriage, not getting divorced, isn't the same as being married. Being married and keeping my commitment means that I don't just love David when it's convenient for me. I love him well every day, whether he's deserving of it or not, because that's who I am, and that's what my relationship with my higher power requires me to do. Thank you.
Thanks, Brent. I'm Dave. I'm an alcoholic. Elena. Yeah. I don't care about my anonymity when I'm in public, but I also protect their anonymity. So, I don't care who knows that I'm a drunk, or an ex-drunk, but it has a direct bearing on her. So I will, if I'm in one of those situations, I keep my mouth shut, and I'll pull somebody aside and say, if you ever want to know how to quit with your drinking, or you got some issues with I've got the perfect excuse, because I'm a national certified addictions counselor. I'm a labor assistance professional, employee assistance professional. I'm a Department of Transportation substance abuse professional. I've got all these little initials after my name. I'm a chaplain for the police and the fire department. So I can pull them aside and say, hey, I've got some experience with this that has nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. I can get away with it. But if I didn't have all those excuses, I would just say, hey, if you ever have an issue with that, I know how to deal with that. I've had some experience with that. I don't need to tell them I'm an Alcoholics Anonymous. And if it's going to have any kind of impact, I'm going to talk to her about it, or the kids, if it might impact them. If it's their friends, buddies, parents that have the issue, I'm going to talk about that. But as far as love goes, most traditional wedding vows have the exact same 3 words: love, honor, and cherish. Right? Love is a decision, and it's something that it's a consciousness to it. Most people fall in love, but we know that the falling in love is very short-lived. It's a chemical reaction. When you're loving somebody, it's a commitment. There's more to it than that. You'll see people that love each other because they're sacrificing for each other. We know a couple that used to come to our couples meeting, and their daughter got married, and they weren't married like a month, and she got some strange neurological disease where she basically became a paraplegic overnight. Their wedding was founded on love, and I don't think they got up there and thought that this was going to be the outcome. But that husband stepped in and would care and love for his wife. There was a sacrifice that was involved. It wasn't about the amore, the emotional of love. It was about he had that expression. You know how if you see somebody you haven't seen in a long time, you're like, oh, look, there's Joe Blow. That is honoring. That's cherishing. That's like, oh, your heart, you can feel that emotion, that burst of emotion. I'm supposed to have that for my wife. I'm supposed to honor her and put her ahead. And I deal with lots of alcoholics, and alcoholics are selfish. And Brenda describes it as them cutting in line. I'll be in the middle of a conversation, all of a sudden the phone will ring, and I'll say, oh, hang on a second, honey, I got to take this. No, I don't. They can leave a voicemail. When I do that and say, honey, I got to take this, an alcoholic just cut in line ahead of her. And that the message she hears is, I'm not as important. You're not honor me and cherishing me, and it's not loving her. I've made a decision not to love her in that scenario, and I'm asleep to it. But if she's willing to call me out on it and say, hey, that alcoholic just cut in front of me, I'll be like, oh, I can make amends for it and not do that behavior in the future. I can bring it into meditation and get a vision for how not to do that. One of the things that we learned from our kids is there's that, Brenda calls it the golden 5 minutes. When you pick the kids up from school or whatever, and they get in the car and you say, how was your day? They're going to tell you how their day was. And if you miss that golden moment, it will never occur again. You can ask them an hour later, and they won't, how was school today? Fine. But when they first get in the car, they're excited. Dad, guess what happened? We're all little kids still. So I realized that there's a golden 5 minutes as well. So one of the things that I do, and I don't know whether she's aware of it or not, is I stop in front of my next door neighbor's house, 3 houses down. They must think I'm nuts, because I pull my car over, and if I'm on the phone with a drunk, which I usually am, I finish the conversation, because I'm not going to walk in the house on the phone. Not going to happen. So I finish the conversation, I put on my spiritual armor and say a prayer. And then I do a 5 for 5. When I walk through the door, I announce myself, hey, baby, I'm home, and I listen for the echo, wherever she is. She could be in her office, which is the laundry room. She could be in the bedroom. She could be upstairs. And that's our running joke, because my son always comes home with his laundry, and I'm like, oh, you're in your office again? She's taking care of him. But whenever I find out where she is, I go to her. I put down my stuff, take off my hat, my sunglasses, put my phone down, and I go find out where she is, and I spend 5 minutes. I try to spend 5 minutes there with her. If she's standing up, I stand. If she's sitting down, I sit. I get to her level. Hey, what's going on? How's your day? What did I miss? What's going on? It's critically important, because I travel for a living, to give her that golden 5 minutes. And it's amazing what transpires. And the reason I put on my spiritual armor is because if you've been gone for 3 days, which I used to call it the shotgun blast, the door would open and you're like, boom, while you were gone, the dishwasher broke, and all these problems, and just like you feel like got knocked back out the door. When I was doing the military thing, we had little kids. I'd walk through the door, and she'd been with a little infant for 3 days. I'd walk through the door, and she'd be like, here, So I would stop on the New Jersey Turnpike in the rest area, and I'd go to sleep. I'd sleep for 45 minutes or whatever, set an alarm clock, and then wake up, and then I'd drive home so that I had the energy because I knew I needed to relieve her. That was the most loving thing I could do. Doing the 5 for 5 is a loving thing. Putting down the stupid phone is a loving thing. Setting do not disturb at 9 o'clock at night until 9 o'clock in the morning, because alcoholics will call all time, day or night. They don't care what time it is, So I do that to protect the love that we share together. Critically important. One of the most loving things that we came to together was to provide her a safe environment to communicate with me. So I'm a big burly guy. She's afraid to come confront me sometimes. So we came up with a hand signal, which is this right here. It's a fist inside of an open hand. When she comes to me and she'll walk in my office or wherever I happen to be and she'll go like this and give me the symbol, then she pauses. And it's my job at that point to get spiritually centered. So I say, hang on a second, take a deep breath. I want to get some oxygen up into my head. I say a quick prayer. Okay, baby, what do you got? And when I give her that announcement, no matter what comes out of her mouth, it's a safe environment. I will not raise my voice. I will not yell. I will not shout. I'll just take the information and say, thank you for sharing me. And then I can start the process. If she catches me off guard, if I'm typing on a thing and I got something in my mind and she comes walking in and starts dumping some load that she's carrying, she's liable to get the turret. And we give it to our kids. Our little kids would come in and they'd go, I'd say, oh, what did you do? Okay, what do you got? Doesn't mean there's not going to be consequences for them, but it let them know they could always communicate. It wasn't too long ago, my kid came home. Oh, he comes home and he makes a beeline for me, which I already knew something was up because he usually makes a beeline for her. And he goes like this. And I'm like, okay, come here. And we go into the other room. And I said, what's up? And he goes, Dad, I really screwed up. And his headlight burned out on his car. And he's got anxiety. And so he was afraid that he was going to get pulled over for not having a headlight. So he gets in his car and he brings it home so I can put a new bulb in his car. But he's driving so fast on the highway, he gets a speeding ticket. And he's not working. He's in college. He doesn't have any money. He's like, Dad, and I said, oh, that's going to be expensive. And it was like a $300 ticket. And he knows we don't pay for speeding tickets. That's on him, So we had this conversation. He's like, well, you're going to tell Mom? I said, well, I think she needs to know. Yeah. And so I helped him get up the courage to talk to his mom. But I don't know if he gave you the symbol or not, but that symbol is really important. It's part of love. It gives the other person a chance. So you have to be vulnerable. And like I shared the other day, intimacy. The most loving thing I can do for her is let her inside the wall and know that she will be caring and kind and considerate when she's in there because everything's exposed. Now, we all know the chinks in each other's armor. If we want to fire around, we can get around through the armor. But when the person is willing to let the wall down and trusts you to come inside and be inside, that's where the true love happens, where you're just totally vulnerable, totally exposed to each other, and you're just being. And it's really the Holy Spirit speaking through you. God in you is seeing the God in me, and it's communing together, and it's just a wonderful, beautiful thing. So it's an interesting principle. It's easy for us to look at it from our own perspective, but the trick with a couples meeting is try to think about what you do to love your partner and vice versa. How do you apply that principle to the other person, not for yourself? And with that, I'm going to pick my first victim, sitting right there. Punch, what do you got?
What have I got about what?
Tell us about how you apply love in your relationship.
How do I apply love into my relationship?
Yeah.
How do you love your wife
How do you
well?
love your wife?
Or your spouse well?
Oh, boy.
Give me one example of something.
You got this.
Give me one example of how you love Miranda.
Very patient. Extremely patient with I'd like to say I spoil her by doing a lot more than I should be doing around the house, because I go to work and I come home and I will empty the dishwasher. And sometimes I might say something sarcastic, or I just do it. And I'll do it over and over and over again. And what is she doing that she cannot empty the dishwasher when I'm gone at work? But she's probably just hearing this for the first time now. Because it's not that big of a deal. It's just a dishwasher. And she does do stuff around the house, and I appreciate everything she does. And I try to encourage her to go back to school. And I don't harp on it. Just try to. I said, I don't keep saying that you need to go back to school, you need to go back to school. I just kind of say, what about that school thing? Remember that school thing we were talking about?
Mm-hmm.
She just reapplied to go back to school. Cool. Because I just took my time, and I know she's very fragile. Mm-hmm. I know that because I'm very fragile. So I want to treat her with the same fragility that I might want to be treated with.
Nice.
I know I'm not better than her, I'm just different. You passed on this this group conscious at the home level years ago to me. Maybe not directly, but through either CD or JR or Ralph or somebody. Mm-hmm. And we try to do that. We try to have that group conscience, and it is just us and the dogs. Dogs don't get a vote. It's just like I don't get a vote. But no, but you bring that up about if it's no, it's no. If one person doesn't like it, I like that idea. I don't think we've ever tried that one yet. So, I adore Miranda. I think she's just the sweet as pecan pie. I just love her to death. And I'm just blessed. I'm extremely blessed to have her as a mate.
Amen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chuck. Did you see how he hesitated in the very beginning? How many of us have thought to apply this principle? It gets your mind thinking. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? There's a great card. It used to be printed by Alcoholics Anonymous. It's no longer printed by AA. It's now printed by Al-Anon. It's called Just for Today. And one of the assignments, my sponsor made me do that every day when I first got sober, and I still do one of them. Just for today, I'm going to do something nice for my wife. And if it gets found out, it doesn't count. I'm going to do 2 things that I don't want to do just for the practice. And so I go around and I'm working, trying to figure out what can I do for her that she's not going to find out. And there's nothing sucks worse than it's like 11 o'clock at night and she's like, oh yeah, I noticed you did such and such. You're like, oh man, I got to find something else before I go to bed. Miranda, you got anything? How do you love Chuck?
Patiently too.
Patience.
In a great manner of learning his tics and how he does things. I'm a lot more loosey-goosey, and he's very black and white, a matter of fact. That saying is true. You marry your father. My father's just like that too. But so I can't. Oh yeah, this is harder than.
It's harder than it seems, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we're always very good at communication, so that's definitely something I would really like to apply that. And the yes and no, for sure. He's a terrific. He's amazing. I hit the lottery of love.
Nice.
With him, and he is very patient with me and kind, and there's so many things that we communicate very, very well on. And there are areas I could do a much better job at loving him.
Gives you food for thought, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cody, your wife isn't here, but how do you love your wife?
So I think, so we went through, I remember, like a little while before starting to work with you, I remember the look on her face. She was crying and saying, "You're not listening to me." Like, I was totally delusional, like just self-will running at it. And, so I think through doing some of this work and talking to you regularly and what selfless act of love are you going to do for your wife today, conversations, doing those 5 minutes before going into the house to put my spiritual armor on is a huge tool. But what we do now, I think, like the biggest gift I should say, is thinking about how she's able to communicate what's going on with her and what frustrates her, and allowing her to have that time to communicate that with me in an effective way, so that I can understand her better. And we call it every Tuesday night. It's a marriage investment. So in our calendar, we did a calendar invite thing. So it goes off every Tuesday, and this is something that I do is, no matter what she brings to the table, right? Like the other week, it was like, hey, I'm doing all the laundry. Like, I'm doing the dishes, like, you're going to work, I'm watching the kids, she's like, she works, she takes care of our kid, she's doing more. And so I think the biggest reason is being able to sit down, listen to that feedback, and not take it, and listen, and taking her suggestions, and taking them to heart, and then being intentional after that. And when I'm seeing things around the house that need to be done, it's like, oh yeah, I made a commitment. I made a commitment to her, right? Because I love her, and it's not about me. So just really trying to learn how to be unselfish and love her through self-sacrifice. Mm-hmm. So that's what I got.
Thanks, Cody.
Yeah.
Who else wants to share about how they love their spouse? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Janae.
Hi, Janae.
So we do a lot of things that you talked about. Richard gets home just after I do, but I hear him coming in and we meet in the kitchen and we'll have that 5 minutes. How was your day? Share, how was your day? And then later when we walk the dog, if there's more to talk about, we'll talk to him. But we schedule time. I am like going. So we schedule time each week that's just our time. And if I'm going somewhere or something's coming up that I have to, staff meeting or gonna go do something with the grandkids or whatever, I reschedule.
Mm-hmm.
I don't just say, well, I'm going to be here today. I always make sure that time, it's important time to us. And so I always do that. That's it.
That's awesome. You talked about that. It's like having a date night. Date night is very important. What got you to fall in love with your spouse in the first place? You devoted your time. You paid attention to them. You pursued them. Why aren't you pursuing them in your marriage? And if you've got kids, I tell all the guys that I work with, if they've got girls, you got to date your daughter. The biggest fear a father's got is that his daughter's going to meet some guy that's an idiot. Well, who's her example? If you don't date her and take her out and show her that a man's supposed to open the door for her, pull out the chair, pay the check, do those behaviors, she's not going to know that that's what is acceptable. And when she meets a guy, if he doesn't do that stuff for her, and you've been teaching her that that's what a man does for a woman, she's going to go, hell with him, he doesn't treat me right. That she learns from the example. Really important stuff to make that time for each other. Because, when people are, I do, as a chaplain, I do death notifications and stuff, and I get to see people at the very end of their lives, at the end times. And none of the families ever talk about, the vacation that they that they didn't go on. They talk about the time that they wish they had more time with their loved ones, that they spent time. They don't care that their husband made a certain amount of money and going to work and that they got a new car in the garage. Nobody cares about that crap. Well, the stuff that's really critically valuable is the human interactions they had and the time they got to spend together. You know, when my brother was dying, one of the greatest gifts I got was to be able to come out here to California and nursemaid him in his last couple of days before he passed. What a gift that was, you know? And that was a hell of a sacrifice. That was love offering from my wife because she had the kids. She had everything at that point. She's like, no, go deal with your brother. Go spend time with Dom. You know? Really important stuff. Who else has got some? Oh, I'm sorry, your husband. Yeah, you gonna share?
I would love to. I'm
Please.
an alcoholic.
Thank you. Hi, Richard.
My wife is very humble. We don't fight. We haven't had a fight in over a decade. We were just made for each other. And I love every day when I'm coming up the hill to my house that my heart starts beating faster. And I'm crazy about my wife. And the best thing that ever happened, one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life was my daughters got married, you know, and they had started having kids, and they both had kids. And they were complaining about, I went down and was visiting with my new grandbabies and my daughters, and they were complaining about something their husbands were doing. And I said, look, honey, they're both pretty good guys. You know, there's no such thing as a perfect husband. And my oldest daughter looked at me and she goes, my mom has the perfect husband.
Oh, how cool.
And I mean, it almost makes me cry every time I think about it. But my wife has made it so easy. I never don't want to come home. I never want it. I just, all I want is time with my wife and my kids and my grandchildren. And it's because we practice the principles in all our affairs. We just don't argue. We don't argue about stuff. It's just not worth it. I mean, it's just not worth it. So, you know, I come home and my heart is full every day that I get to come home. So, thank you for making it so easy.
Thanks you. Thank you very much. Carlene, how do you love your husband?
I want to first say thank you.
Go work there.
Yeah, come on up here. Get you on. Make sure we get you on tape. Come on up here, Jimmy. You're going to be next.
I want to say thank you for being here and thank you for doing this. But for me, and Brenda kind of started with the selfishness thing, I was around on the outside of the AA program for, I would say, like 12 years. And I'd go to AA meetings or conventions or something as the wife. I was not in Al-Anon. I had no 12-step program. And I would hear over and over again, oh, the alcoholic is selfish. And I go, oh yeah, the alcoholic's selfish. And I would hear that, you know, oh, the alcoholic's selfish. And when I finally reached a point where, and Dave talked about it a little bit, JR's spiritual growth was going, and I was spiraling down out of control, going, you know, what about me? That I finally got the willingness to go to Al-Anon. I finally got the willingness to seek help. And when I got to that fourth step, and I said, oh, I'm not selfish. Everything I do is for other people. So thank goodness I had a loving person sit behind me or sit next to me and say, really? So you're not selfish? No, I want the best for everybody. I just want everybody to be happy. I'm willing to do whatever it takes for them to be happy. And through that process, I learned that what I was really doing was trying to make them happy so I'd be okay. I was also oftentimes figuring out what was going to make them happy and making sure they did that, whether they wanted to or not, because that was going to make them happy. And that selfishness started showing itself. And I can't tell you how many times, and I hate to use Al-Anon jokes, but there is an Al-Anon joke about, you know, how do 4 Al-Anons figure out how to go to lunch? Because they all go, I don't care, because they won't make the decision. They don't want to be the one that says, this is what we're going to do. So one of the ways I've learned to love JR, and I still don't always do it perfectly, is to tell him, this is what I want. And if he asks me if he can do something, he's talked a lot about his motorcycle. Can I go on a motorcycle ride? I try to be honest enough to say, no, not today. You know, the grandkids are going to be here. We're going to do something. So that on the day that I say, yes, please go for a ride, I love him enough to be honest enough to say, yes, I want you to go on a ride. And we've had a recent discussion about this. There are times where it gets frustrating. Do I want him to go and do what he enjoys? Yes. But there's also the times where I say, but when you go and enjoy what you're doing, I'm here doing, holding down the fort. So getting that balance. But my love for him is try to be as honest as I can, because that's also something I learned in my inventory. I would have told you up and down the road how honest I was. And of course I learned in my inventory that I was not honest. I was manipulating a situation by telling somebody what they wanted to hear. So I tried to love JR enough to be honest with him, to tell him no when the answer is no. Tell him yes when the answer is yes. Because otherwise he's trying to figure out, is she saying no and she means yes, or is she saying yes and she means no, and when I come home, is she going to say, but yeah, you went and now this? So that's how I try to love him enough to be honest. Honest with myself and honest with him.
Thanks, Carly. JR, what do you got?
Well, I kind of have to concur with Carlene. Yeah, I've been married 38 years almost, so I've learned to adapt. She mentioned being honest with one another. There's an author named Don Miguel Ruiz. And Don Miguel Ruiz wrote a book called Four Agreements. Yes, Four Agreements.
And he also wrote The Mastery of Love.
Yes, he did. But in the Four Agreements, he talks about to be impeccable with your word. Say what you mean and mean what you say. And I have adopted that way of life, and so has Carlene. But I think one of the greatest signs of my love for her and my love for anyone is to never expect more from them than I'm willing to give to the relationship. And there are many things that are given in a relationship, and staying married, is it's a huge commitment. It's a huge relationship, and I have to be careful not to expect her to give me more time than I'm willing to give her. I have to be careful to not expect her to be more honest with me than I am to be honest with her. And there are many other areas of our lives where this comes into play, Equality, if you may, in a relationship is one of the hugest areas that I show my love for my wife. Of course, I try to do things to help her out and to give her an opportunity to voice her opinion and to direct things as much as possible. And oftentimes, I think it kind of catches her off guard, And the same with me, Oftentimes she will ask my opinion or my stand on a certain issue, and sometimes I go, what the hell, why you even bother me with that? Because I don't want to be bothered. I'm a busy man, and I have to keep in mind that when she asks for my viewpoint, that obviously my viewpoint means something to her. And I have to be fair enough to work with her because I expect her to work with me. Thanks for allowing me to share.
Thanks, JR. the expression that JR used, I learned it a little different in Al-Anon. Say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean. Right? Critically important. We're pretty much out of time, so I'm going to read the closing here from the couples in just a second. I do want to say one other thing really quickly, is if you're doing this work, you're going to bury people, because we're dealing with a fatal progressive disease. And one of the ways I love my wife is to make sure my wife is taken care of. And I've been seeing a trend lately where people don't have the basics. They're hurting people from the grave because they're dying without taking the time to write a will. They've got a special need child. They've never bothered to set up a trust. They don't have life insurance. They don't have a basic prudent reserve. They haven't done some of the basic financial stuff. And alcoholics tend not to be okay with that. We don't know a whole lot about it, and we spend so much money, and we have these funny, weird quirks around finances and money. But it's one of the things that's absolutely necessary to make sure that my wife is taken care of. When I got my military retirement, I had to make a decision, and I'm taking less of a military retirement to make sure that if I die, she gets a military retirement as well. To make sure that she's secure, that I'm taking care of her. And I do that out of love, But it took some effort, some forethought, some planning to make sure that was the case. And I don't hear it talked about in meetings very often. I do steel on steel, and we finally added some of those questions to our steel on steel group. Do you have a prudent reserve? We're coming into some weird financial times, folks. If you don't have a prudent reserve, there was an interesting thing. They said 50 million Americans are within $500 of a financial catastrophe in their life. Wow, that's a staggering number. Financial planners will tell you should have 6 months worth of income as a prudent reserve. I bumped mine up to 8 months just to make sure, to help love my wife, to take care of her. It makes her feel okay. I talked about the black hole financial account. We've been putting money into that savings account for our entire marriage. I have no idea what the value is in that account, and we've never taken a dime out of that account. Money only goes in. Why? Because it gives her a sense of security. Guys, a woman's greatest need is security. If you make her feel secure, and I told you about my analogy of the hourglass. I got to pour enough love sand in the top faster than it's draining out the bottom. I couldn't understand why we've been married for dozens and dozens of years, and my wife would look at me sometimes and say, do you still love me? I'd think, what the hell is wrong with you? Is what's going on in my head. What I had to realize is I'm not filling her love tank fast enough. Get your act together, Dave, and love her better. Little things like that are critically important. Women, a man's greatest need is honor and respect. Be careful with your words, the things you say. If you get a weird look on your husband's face when you say something, it's probably what you said. It's not what you meant, but what he heard was disrespectful. And it can be a crushing blow. It can wound the relationship. So being gentle with my words is one of the ways I love my wife. Really important things like that. And you don't get any better at it unless you practice it, and you won't practice it unless somebody challenges you to try figure it out. Give yourself exercises. People think I'm crazy, but I do it. I come up with all these little exercises, and I practice, and I try it to see, how does this work? How can I love my wife better this month? Or, what's something that I can do? And I work at trying to figure those things out to make me a better person, to grow spiritually, because I still have to offset my disease. Anyway, in closing, we'd like to say the opinions expressed here were strictly those of the person who gave them. Take what you like and leave the rest. The things that you heard here were spoken in confidence and should be treated as confidential. Keep them within the walls of this room and the confines of your mind. Also, please take extra care to respect what was shared here by your partner. Remember, there are always two perspectives to every situation. It took courage for them to take a risk and be honest and vulnerable. They were only sharing from their perspective and how they feel, so let God be the judge and determine which perspective is correct. Therefore, we want to emphasize and drive home the fact there should be absolutely no retaliation against anyone for what they shared, especially for expressing how they see or feel about any situation. This meeting must be a safe place for everyone to be open and honest in their sharing. If you have an issue with what was shared, take it to God and your sponsor, but do not take it out on your partner through anger or retaliation. Remember, just because they see something different from you doesn't make either of you wrong. Lastly, a few special words to those of you who have not been with us long. Whatever your problem, there are those among us who have had them too. If you try to keep an open mind, you will find help. You will come to realize that there is no situation too difficult to be bettered, and no unhappiness too great to be lessened. We are not perfect. The welcome we gave you may not express the warmth we have in our hearts for you. After a while, you will discover that though you may not like all of us, you will love us in a very special way, the same way we already love you. Talk to each other, reason things out with someone else, but let there be no gossip or criticism of one another. Instead, let the understanding, love, and peace of the program grow in you one day at a time. That's our closing for our couples meeting.
And it's really important if you have a couples meeting, it's not fair to use the honesty of your spouse against them on the way home or once you get there.
I want to take just a second to thank each and every one of you for giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm just a drunk who's had some experience. You know, I'm just an alcoholic, same as you, or an Al-Anon, same as you. If you're not a participating member of Al-Anon, I would challenge you, if you're going to be an effective sponsor working the 12 steps, you need Al-Anon, because you're going to start to care for the people you're trying to help more than they care for themselves. You are going to be codependent. Al-Anon's where I learned how to not be codependent. Al-Anon's where I learned how to have intimate relationships with other people. They're much better at relationships than alcoholics are. Valuable deal. So I'm tremendously filled with gratitude. Brenda's made the statement, I like doing workshops. I hate doing workshops. No, I really do. I do workshops as a way of carrying the message, but I think workshops, people get information and they don't apply it to their lives. I love doing retreats. I love sitting down with people and doing work, doing exercises, doing things, and we get to watch each other grow in the process. I came here because JR invited me to come here, and I knew I was talking to my people. I'm like preaching to the choir here. You guys are thumpers. But I would challenge each and every one of you to carry this message out there. Take the risk, be vulnerable, and wonderful, wonderful things will happen. I'm not joking. I think I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet, and it's because of the work that I do. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for giving me an opportunity to get up here and be a snot fest and challenge you guys and everything else. Yeah, did you have a question?
No, not really a question. I just wanted to say thank you for whatever that assignment you sit everybody out on. And
Yeah.
Manish came into my path. And,
Oh.
you know, and I really want to thank all you guys for allowing me to come in after the initial meeting.
Uh-huh.
You know, I was just in tears last night, listening to what was going on. And you know, the Creator has just blessed me with answering my prayers. So I really thank all you guys for allowing that.
That's awesome, and thank you for coming. There's another miracle, right? Miracles after miracles after miracles. I was talking to Brenda today on the way home from breakfast. I said, I know it was a sacrifice to come out here and do this of our time and our family, being away from the kids, but I can't wait to see what God's going to do with this. You know, JR shared it in his story. That talk that Mark and I did in 2001, it's still going around the world. I get 3 or 4 emails a week from people all over the world saying, this changed my life. Thank you. That's God. I didn't do anything but get up and share my experience. And we did the same thing. I couldn't have done this without you, and you guys have shared the comments. It's on tape now. You'll be amazed. People will say, you know, I was listening to this workshop and it changed my life, and they'll be telling you about it, and you'll go, well, what, you mean FOTS in Northern California 2019? Well, that's me on tape. You heard me there. I was sharing it. You know, tell me about it. And these miracles will be revealed. Each and every one of you, if you don't believe it, let me be the first to tell you, you are a walking miracle. And you are maybe the only big book that somebody's ever going to read. Do not forget that responsibility. Jared, do you want something to say to close?
Yeah.
I'm done. That's it for me. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.